Hello there, and welcome to episode number 88 for the National Land Realty Podcast, where we discuss all things land. Our goal here is to inform, educate, and entertain those of you who own land or are interested in the buying and selling of land throughout the United States. My name is Mac Christian, and I am the Chief Marketing Officer here at National Land Realty. I'll be your host for this episode. Now, today, we're talking about that special time of season. Flowers are growing, grass is growing, turkey and bear season is just about to kick off. And we're here to talk about taxes, which may not be what you expected when this dialogue started. But keep this in mind. Our agents nationwide make up over 400 small business owners throughout the United States. And the landowners that we work with are often business owners through and through, whether that be producing food on their land, leasing their land for hunting, any number of things. Small business owners and landowners go side by side. So today we're talking with VARC Solutions, and we're talking with Brad White, who is their Chief People and Operations Officer. Now, VARC Solutions is something that works in tandem with Quickbooks. They provide solutions to customize Quickbooks to fit your needs. Now, as everybody sits down at this time of year and talks to their accountant and talks to their bookkeeper, or maybe you're doing your own bookkeeping and trying to keep track of that, solutions like VARC Solutions help you keep everything in order. Now, we're not pitching VARC Solutions directly. We're just providing the opportunity for them to discuss what their platform does, what they might be able to do for you, and how they might be a tool in your belt as you run your business. Now, sit back and enjoy. Okay, so we have it. This is a cool opportunity to talk about a business platform that basically a lot of agents use, but we're just going to say like a lot of self-employed people, a lot of people that do their own booking. So we have Brad White here. He's the Chief People and Operations Officer with VARC Solutions. And Brad, tell us a little bit about yourself, a little bit about your company, how you got here.
Thanks, sir. Yeah, thanks for having me on the show too. So VARC Solutions, we do a lot of different things, but we focus primarily on small, medium-sized companies that use QuickBooks for their accounting software. And that means a lot of different things. We do bookkeeping, we do QuickBooks consulting, training, cleanups, migrations. We do a whole bunch of stuff related to that. And as a company, we also are so experts at QuickBooks for sure, but also experts at a platform called QuickBase, which is kind of like a custom cloud database solution that we build custom solutions for when there's not like a software product in the market for a very specific scenario. We build custom apps on QuickBase, and we're kind of also just big picture experts on all those different integrated solutions that connect with QuickBooks or QuickBase, and obviously we have a lot of clients that are kind of in your industries.
So what's one of the, you're talking about how you build sort of a customized platform when QuickBooks is not necessarily hitting the mark. What are and I don't want to accuse QuickBooks of not hitting the mark, but everybody runs their business differently. And so what are some of the examples that you've worked with where a customized solution makes sense?
Great question. In fact, I'll give you a few examples and options. Like one of the biggest downsides of QuickBooks, and by the way, we love QuickBooks. We use QuickBooks, so we're big fans. And when it can be used, use it, right? It's a great accounting software. But like one of the downsides is you can't have multiple contacts for a given client or vendor. And that's fine in really, really small businesses, but it's not uncommon to say, hey, I'm working with a specific customer, client, and they've got a salesperson that I might be talking to. They might have a purchasing person. They might have an operations or IT person, depending on, what you're doing for them. And in QuickBooks, you can have a client with a contact. Otherwise, you're using notes, which is not exactly the same thing as having like a CRM system. And so one of the most common things that we do is we help build CRM systems to integrate back with QuickBooks so that you can get really manage the contacts, manage the activities, manage the conversations, beyond just having a note somewhere. And we do that really in two ways, right? We do QuickBase, which is, think of it as starting completely from scratch, building a custom solution, having everything you want it to have, nothing you don't want it to have, custom fields for exactly what you need to track. It's a very good solution. And kind of in between QuickBooks and this completely custom solution that you might build in QuickBase, we also recommend, there's a great CRM system out there called Method. And it's a little bit more of an out-of-the-box solution, software as a service, cloud service that connects and integrates with QuickBooks. But it's got a lot of the bells and whistles already there. And you can kind of get in and tweak it and be up and running very, very quickly and also pretty affordably. But that CRM component is probably the biggest downside of QuickBooks by itself, is that it really doesn't have a solution. And so that's when we start looking for things like Method, things like QuickBase, and a couple other ones that we recommend.
Excellent. So the question of the day is for people out there that do manage their own business, for people that do their own books, probably have explored QuickBooks, probably have looked at it. For those that have not made the jump to it, what would make QuickBooks right for somebody to be able to use, or what, in what situations does QuickBooks lend itself well?
Great question. And I'll say this, Intuit QuickBooks in the United States probably has over an 80% market share with small, medium-sized companies. So there's not many scenarios where somebody would be looking for something other than just QuickBooks for the accounting side. It is very, very capable. Not only is there a desktop version of QuickBooks, but there's also an online version of QuickBooks, and they're very different. Different capabilities, different feature sets, things like that. But I'd say, if I met somebody, on the street or in a grocery store or in the elevator, and they, were looking for an accounting solution, I would have, no problem saying QuickBooks is the right solution for you if you're a small, medium-sized company, or, mid-market or lower mid-market company. Until you need, more regulatory controls and audit controls, and you're a public company and all that kind of stuff. When you start getting into that realm, usually there's the next level up, and those software programs are a lot more expensive. I mean, hundreds of thousands, if not potentially millions of dollars, depending on the capabilities that are needed. So most companies, most small medium-sized companies, QuickBooks is a perfect fit, because it does the basics of accounting, right? You can run your financial statements, you can track your loans, you can track your assets, run your financial statements. It's very, very, and by the way, entering bills, paying bills, invoicing and charging clients, doing payroll. There's not a lot that it can't do. I'd say one of the things that QuickBooks historically has not done extremely well by itself is probably the inventory side of things. And so, depending on the specific business, QuickBooks can do some basic inventory. The desktop enterprise product has actually a pretty good inventory solution in there to handle things like manufacturing and assemblies and bill of materials and things like that. Whereas the online platform doesn't really have a native a native inventory solution. And so, a roundabout way of answering your question too is, no matter what they need, what the business needs, whether it's a desktop product or the online cloud product, there's also add-on solutions that integrate with QuickBooks Online to handle all those things too. So, whereas QuickBooks Desktop, you could do kind of natively inventory, a pretty solid handle on the basics. QuickBooks Online, I would not recommend for inventory unless you were adding on an inventory solution as well that kind of bolts on to QuickBooks Online.
Gotcha. So a question I wanted to ask you is with QuickBooks as a solution, right? Like with everything that you've mentioned, and I think most of us out there have at least a base understanding of what QuickBooks is. What does it look like from a user perspective, say if they've never used a system like this?
Well, so I would say, folks that have never used QuickBooks, they're probably either doing accounting completely by hand, okay, which we don't recommend, or they're trying to track everything in an Excel spreadsheet, okay? You got a massive spreadsheet. You're tracking all sorts of details in the spreadsheet, and that's good when you're starting out. It's good when you've got certain details that you're trying to track that don't really lend themselves to a system. But when you start getting into having multiple people, okay, that need access to the records or the data, when you need a system to be able to code your bank and credit card transactions so that you can easily produce financial statements, okay, Excel just doesn't do it. Excel is not an accounting system. It's not a financial system, right? It's just a spreadsheet. So when if I was describing QuickBooks to somebody that I just kind of met, at a networking function or something like that, I would basically say, think of QuickBooks as the somewhat do-it-yourself accounting system that's a whole lot better than a spreadsheet, where you actually have you can go in and see your balance. You can go in and reconcile your bank and credit cards easily. Especially with QuickBooks Online, you can literally connect your bank and have those transactions flowing into your bank and credit card accounts, so that they can be coded to, utilities, restaurants, professional fees, what have you, much more efficiently than if you tried to do it, in a spreadsheet or something, or in a paper bank register, heaven forbid. And also having everything connected. So for example, let's say I needed to record my income. Okay. Well, I could get paid and make a deposit and say that was income of some sort. Okay. Super easy. But if I need to be able to invoice a customer, have them pay me online via credit card, now I'm looking for a system that can handle that and have everything tied together. And QuickBooks does all that.
Gotcha. Okay. And you mentioned something to me, like, for those listening, we usually do a brainstorming session about what we're going to talk about and discuss some of the bullet points that we're going to hit.
Yeah.
So we do have some level of preparation to this, despite, some of my shortcomings as an interviewer. But we do some prep. But I wanted to ask you, you made a comment that it's rare to find a business owner that only has one LLC. And we see that, I mean, with the company that I work with, right, National Land Realty, we have agents all over the country that will form an LLC or they'll form an S corp, depending on what makes sense for their tax status and how they do business. But you do see exactly that. Very
Yeah.
few of them have one LLC. How does QuickBooks help out in that situation?
Great question. And yeah, we see it all the time. And really, I'd say there's like two big scenarios that I see all the time. One is where it isn't necessarily multiple LLCs, but I'm a business owner and nothing that I do is like any other business out there, right? I've got this one thing that I do, um, call it, house flipping or something like that. It's rare that that's the only thing that I do, right? I'm house flipping and I'm also maybe doing some GC work, and I'm also doing, I've got this guy that kind of goes out and does some landscaping for me, and I charge people for that, and I'm also doing Airbnbs. That could all in theory, be done under one LLC, and I've seen owners doing a lot of different things. But yeah, when you start getting into working with your accountants of the world and CPAs of the world and tax preparers of the world, a lot of times they want to see all that stuff separated. Sometimes there's tax advantages to having all that stuff separated. And so very commonly, you've got a business, an LLC, if you will, that is the operations of the business, right? And that's where I'm recording my revenue and all my expenses and paying my bills. But then I've also got another LLC that's kind of like managing the land and the property that I own. Okay. And I'm doing, that company is charging rent to the other company, the operations business. And that's just two examples out of three or four that you could probably add on for different scenarios. So how does that all work and fit with QuickBooks? Well, at the end of the day, if there are multiple, if there are different legal entities, right, I need a separate file or a separate account. Um, and so with QuickBooks Desktop, the nice thing about the QuickBooks Desktop platform is I can buy QuickBooks Desktop Enterprise, for example, one license, one subscription, and I can have as many companies set up in that license as I want. I could have 5, 10, 15, 20, and they're each having a separate set of books, right? And that's what you need if they're different legal entities. QuickBooks Online is a little bit different in that respect, in that the way QuickBooks Online is structured from a licensing perspective is each separate legal entity needs its own QuickBooks Online subscription. So let me clarify. So QuickBooks Enterprise, you could have one license or subscription effectively, right? With multiple legal entities all within that as separate company files. With QuickBooks Online, you need multiple QuickBooks Online accounts or subscriptions. So if you've got 5 companies, you need 5 QuickBooks Online accounts. And that's an additional fee for each one of those accounts. And so depending on how many companies we're talking about, that QuickBooks Online can ultimately get pretty expensive, right? So those are the kind of things that we do talk to people about when they're evaluating QuickBooks, and we're basically helping them talk through. Sometimes one scenario could be less expensive, another scenario could be more expensive. So it really just kind of depends. But all that to say, when we get into those legal entities where they literally need to be separated, payroll needs to be separated, taxes need to be separated, all that stuff needs to be separated into different companies or accounts. Whereas if you have that maybe that first scenario that I talked about, where it's really one business entity and I'm just doing a lot of different things, QuickBooks, both desktop and online, have a feature called class tracking, which allows me to have one set of books, one legal entity, but still break down my profit and loss by class. Some people would call that department, some people would call that location. Sometimes it's just revenue centers of your business or business lines that you may be needing to delineate, so that ultimately you could go run a P&L by class and say, okay, overall, here's how much I'm making, but for each one of these separate things within this entity that I do, I could see the breakdown of P&L by class for each one of those different types of things. A good example of that might be like residential versus commercial construction. Okay. Again, I might have one construction company, but I might want to see a P&L for all my residential construction and a separate P&L for my commercial construction, all in the same set of books. And even that's possible with class tracking.
So, and we talked briefly about utilizing sort of what VARC does with QuickBooks as an application that could be used for agriculture. And I'm getting a sense of, from what you're talking about right now, that is one of those applications where you're trying to figure out different divisions or different sections of your company where that's leverageable, right?
Yeah, yeah, absolutely. Because again, there's no one cookie cutter agriculture company out there, right? I might be selling, food products. I might be selling, the livestock, and I might, being even, selling the produce from, a chicken farm, right? And, like the eggs and different things like that, or the milk from the cow. So there's a lot of scenarios when you get into agriculture. And from an overall accounting system, QuickBooks is still incredibly good for those industries. And I think the devil's in the details sometimes when you start going, okay, well, how do I track my inventory when it's growing? How do I take the cost of all the seeds and the food and the food that all those livestock are consuming? And that's when it gets probably really, really hard. And so having a CPA or a tax preparer that's really expert at that specific industry can really, really help. But a lot of times, you can bolt on an inventory solution that can handle, the sales of those different products that you're producing. But when you start getting into the tracking and cost of goods sold and work in progress and different things like that related to that stuff that you're producing and growing and harvesting and things like that, I think you need, sometimes a custom solution depending on what you're trying to do.
Yeah, I was going to say a lot of what we've talked about with QuickBooks as it relates to VARC, your company, about how they work, is I put it together kind of like how you mentioned building a sale or building a CRM into the system, and I start mentally going immediately to Salesforce, where you have a platform that's very robust, does a great job, and a lot of people use, but using the blanket solution a lot of the times doesn't quite fit the need. And so you usually work with a partner that can help you customize and help you develop something for that system. It's sort of the opposite end of the spectrum. And I don't count on a lot of listeners knowing how sort of those things, how Salesforce works and stuff like that, just because I'm a marketing guy and we talk to a lot of land people and real estate people. So
Yeah.
but it's sort of in a similar vein, where like you have a platform that functions very robust, but without a vendor partner, it's easy to find yourself challenged, or easy to find something that doesn't quite fit your needs or needs a tweak or something like that, or you need advisory on how to best accomplish what you're doing, because as you're talking your way through it, right? You can do a lot of these things, but there's easier ways to do it, and working with a partner helps you kind of solidify that, and in the long run saves you time and money. And time is the biggest one. Money is definitely in there, right? Like, people are conscientious of that, but your time is so valuable, and spending that time trying to figure things out and making a system work that doesn't really work for you, it's one of those, you want a partner.
Yeah, you do. And like one of the, like when, at VARC Solutions, if you go to our website, one of the things we have on the top banner bar is kind of like our slogan. And our slogan is letting you get back to your business. And the way I like to kind of share that is, nobody gets into business to do their accounting. That's except for the accountants of the world. Nobody else gets into it to spend in front of all day in front of a computer looking at their books, right? Um, the example I always use is, if you're a fence builder or a custom house builder or what have you, that's what you love to do. So you need to spend your time doing that. Most business owners are, very sales focused, right? Marketing focused, connecting with clients focused. And that's all kind of outside the computer and outside the accounting system. And that's where you probably need to stay. Um, and so having someone else to do the books, whether that's somebody internally, that you manage and supervise and hold accountable, or if you outsource to a company like ours, it really helps to have people who are expert at what they do, so that you can be an expert at what you do. And that's not only true from an accounting perspective and bookkeeping perspective, but to your point, when you start looking at implementing solutions that help streamline your workflows, automate your workflows, make the rest of your life easier in terms of the management and the operations of the business. Yeah, outsourcing, we're not, I wouldn't even say outsourcing, I would say collaborating with a solution provider like us can be a really, really smart decision. I'll touch on, for example, you mentioned Salesforce. Salesforce is a great solution. It's very well known. Lots and lots of companies that are using it. It can also be very, very expensive. Okay, you start getting in some of those higher end solutions, whether it's Salesforce or NetSuite or anything like that, and a lot of times those systems are very large. They're very involved. We've talked with people who, it takes a year sometimes to get those things up and running, or to migrate from some other system. And that's also very expensive to do. And the challenge with those systems too is, it's hard to know in advance if they're actually going to work, right? So, we've heard just so many horror stories of people who have been sold on a platform, sold on a system like Salesforce, like NetSuite, and the sales reps are saying, yeah, absolutely, it can do all those things, right? And then you're 9 months into an implementation, and then it's like, What do you mean you can't do that? That was critical to our what we're trying to do. And now you're trying to backtrack and look for other solutions. And so being able to work with a partner that's kind of been there, done that, and also knows some of those pitfalls uh, can be very, very can help you save a lot of money. And so that's where I kind of fall back on Quickbase a little bit. So Quickbase is kind of like Salesforce in concept, right? It's a cloud database solution that you can use to kind of integrate with almost anything, and you can kind of build your own custom solutions. The cool thing about Quickbase as a platform is you don't have to be a developer to use it. You don't have to be a programmer. You don't have to have some person with all the lights off in the room, just sitting there coding in front of a computer. And then anytime there's a problem, you have to go to the IT guy to fix it. That's what we love about Quickbase, is that it is a user-friendly solution that's low code. So a lot of the basic things that somebody might want to be able to do can be built by a user, by an owner, if they've got even a minimal or marginal amount of free time to go do that, and they have a sense for what they're trying to do. We typically get brought in as a company when people are like, hey, I really don't want to learn a new platform. Can you guys just set it up? Here's my vision. Can you guys make that a reality? And we can go do the heavy lifting. And then once it's in place and working, we can help maintain it. And then it's a very collaborative thing where the software is something an owner or a lightly IT savvy person can get in and make just some basic changes. You need to add a field because you didn't think about that one field you needed to track for a client or a project. Easy to do, 5 seconds, you're done. You don't have to call the IT folks to do it. So that's kind of why we really love the Quickbase platform, because it's also relatively less expensive than some of the other larger platforms too.
Yeah, tell me. So we kind of jumped there from where we were into Quickbase. A
Yep.
little bit, like, let's go from like a 101 level of how Quickbase
Okay.
integrates with QuickBooks, and sort of, and you just kind of explained your role where you can get in there and help customize Quickbase for somebody using the system. How does Quickbase fit in with all these platforms?
So good. So let me answer it this way. Regardless of the software that somebody might be considering, whether let's look at just the accounting for a second. Okay, if I can go buy QuickBooks and the basic functionality that it has, if that's perfectly good enough for me, great. There's no need for really any other solution. If I can invoice my clients out of there, get paid, make deposits, um, enter and pay my bills, do my payroll, do my sales tax, I don't need another system. We start looking at QuickBase when some of those basic functionalities are no longer sufficient. Okay, and I'll give you an example. Um, Custom manufacturer of furniture, or just anything where you've got a project management process that you have to implement, or an estimating process where there's, it's not just fill out an estimate and hit send. It's, I need to create an estimate. I need to have, a production person sign off on it. I need to have a sales manager sign off on it. Possibly there's multiple approvals, or maybe there's a multi-stage scenario of that estimating. QuickBooks doesn't really have that capability. And so now I'm looking for, okay, well, what's a good solution for that? Quickbase, just as an example, can take the basic form that you're trying to build with an estimate and can build out that approval process. And it can also, trigger alerts to say, hey, once I've created an estimate and I've basically said it's ready for approval, it can trigger an email, to the next step person who needs to come in and review that and then mark it as approved, and then it can go out to the customer. So you can really manage the workflows that you can't really do independently, so to speak, within QuickBooks. Yeah, it's a little bit hard to kind of visualize on a podcast, but let me kind of try to put something in place that somebody could lock into.
Yeah, well, it's
Um,
it's true automation, right? Where
yeah.
you've got something with QuickBooks where you grab the numbers, you take the numbers that you have, you put it into the system, it knows how to calculate those, you run it, and you're done. And
Yep.
you do that multiple times manually to create your process. But if you want the system to do it for you, like, hey, I want to enter my numbers here, and I want my next screen to pop up here and notify this person about this, I don't want to have to go in and tell, Phil that it's time to do, your time to do your reconciliation or whatever.
Yep.
The system will line that out to where it's like, hey, once you hit enter here, Phil's going to know. And
Mhm.
and so it creates a process like that. Um, and now that I said it, we had talked about reconciliation before with those, but I want to make sure that we touch into QuickBase to its maximum. I want to drastically shift the topic all of a sudden on you.
Yeah, no problem.
But yeah, so quick quick base is a way to customize and on top of a platform that is already fairly robust and your team helps people do that. Is quick base your primary area of focus or you're working more customized than that on a lot of situations, right?
Yeah, as a company, about 50% of what we do is all QuickBooks related. Okay, bookkeeping, consulting, training, setting up, actually working with owners and their businesses within their QuickBooks accounting system. And then the other half of what we do is all QuickBase. So it's pretty much 50-50 split. And so we do both sides, but the QuickBase is really, we really have that conversation with the client when somebody comes to us and says, QuickBook, I feel like I'm outgrowing QuickBooks. I hear that on occasion, right? I feel like I'm outgrowing QuickBooks. And it's really, truly not the accounting system that's being outgrown. It is the business complexity that's getting harder and harder to manage because QuickBooks is not a project management system. Okay, it's not a commission tracking and management system, right? It's not a land development solution, right? It's an accounting system and it does the basics incredibly well. So when somebody says, "Hey, I'm outgrowing QuickBooks," it's usually because I've got these multiple approvals that I need to have. I've got these different types of projects that I do, and I want to be able to automate, to your point, the business automation side. I want to be able to create a new project, have it pre-populate a project task list with these 30 things that we do every single time, and have that assigned and dated, with due dates and just whatever you can dream up that you feel like would help speed up that process and let you do more work. Those are exactly the kind of things that we build in QuickBase to automate those business workflows. And it does it really, really well.
Excellent. So let's, I want to bring this back into the industry that I'm in,
Yep.
not that we haven't talked about, the industry that I'm in, but I want to bring it to sort of case study wise or examples of, service model based businesses or commission based businesses
Mhm.
where, what we have is people in the field who provide a service and for that they receive a commission based on them seeing the service through to the completion of a transaction, right? That's basically real estate. And you could say
Yeah.
that that's in the same realm of, say, a financial advisor or, accountants, really, right? Or,
Yep.
take any of your service-based models, therapy, health-related businesses or anything like that, where you do have a service that you provide, not necessarily a product, and then you throw in commission on top of that. That's going to exclude some of the ones we just talked about, like health models or things like that. But
Mhm.
how do these systems work in, say, a commission structure service business?
Great. Yeah, and here's the fun part of this conversation, by the way, as well, Mac, is that I've never seen a company do commissions the same way.
Yes.
It's always different, right? And even if it wasn't always different, right? Even if it was just, hey, I had this sale and I want to be able to attribute that sale to a rep and pay out a specific commission, it's almost never ever static, right? It's, well, yeah, that's what we started out, but then after 3 months, it's going to change, or after a year, it's going to change, and I need to be able to have a system that is adaptable to the process and the commission structures changing. Um, and that's, again, that's something that really is hard to do just off the shelf software in the marketplace. It really does require something that can be set up to manage and track all that stuff, and also track the changes to it over time. Probably one of we work with a number of different companies where commission tracking and commission management is a really big challenge, because, again, where are they coming from? They're trying to do it in Excel. They're putting a whole bunch of stuff in Excel. They're trying to come up with these different scenarios, and Excel is great when you've got it locked in place and it's not changing. But then as soon as something changes, you can't just change it in one place, because it would retroactively change all the other stuff, right? So being able to have things like a table of rep and rate and effective dates, for that rate. Something as simple as that, where it's like, hey, yeah, between January 1st, 2024 and April 30th, 2024, this is the rate, commission rate that we're paying to that rep. But then starting May 1st, the rate's going to change. And so a system, a relational database can handle that type of work. Probably another example would be when there's tiered commissions. Okay, if my sales are between 5,000 and 50,000, here's my rate. But if it's 51,000 to $150,000, here's my new rate. Again, that stuff is really complicated, really fast. But again, that's something that can be structured in a way that allows it to be automated, right? You put in the sales number and it automatically calculates the commission rate based on the actual volume, or the total volume year to date, whatever you dream up in terms of a structure. Kind of also in your industry, I've also seen scenarios where there's multiple people involved, right? So even though I might have one sale, it might have 3 or 4 people contributing to that sale, all with different contribution rates, or payout rates. Some people might be getting a flat amount. Somebody might be getting a percent of the sale. Somebody might be getting, a percentage of the sale residual every single month for the next, 24 months. So those are all those different types of scenarios where there's no one size fit all scenario or solution out there. You need a solution that adapts and can be customized to all those different scenarios, and also changeable over time.
I think everything that you just said spoke specifically to, our industry, the real estate industry, where, a new agent is going to have a different commission structure than an experienced veteran that does a certain amount of sales. And as somebody grows, their commission structure will change. And so having a system that's flexible to where you don't have to manage it, like you said, in a spreadsheet and worry about retroactive changes to what you're doing. The other part that you brought up is the fixed rate, right? So and for those unfamiliar with this industry, right, real estate agents can pay commission to other real estate agents because they can work with them, and that's how that works. But anything else, somebody who's not licensed to receive commission, they don't receive commission. They can receive a set amount for a service that they provide. So in the case of real estate agents, you're working with drone pilots, or you're working with a photographer, or you could be working with an external marketing company. And those are going to be service-based fees that are at a fixed rate. And managing who gets commission, who gets fixed rate, how those are staggered, and if they change over time, all those things become very complicated in something unless you have a partner like VARC. Is that I want to make sure that I'm paraphrasing in the right way.
No, you said it better than I did, quite honestly. That's exactly how it works, right? Because, again, what are we using if we're not doing, building a system? We're probably trying to track it in Excel. And again, that can get you so far, right? That can be a great way to start. And if it's not that complicated or not changing that much, Excel can be perfect. And yeah, I mean, even if I was my best friend, or brother-in-law asked me that same question, I would say, well, try to track it in Excel until that just doesn't work anymore. And then you start looking at other solutions. Um, but yeah, so the whole concept of just, okay, let's start with Excel and all those things that you're building formulas, based on this, and gated or tiered based, formulas and min maxes to figure out what the right amount is going to be. All those types of formulas and calculations and tiers and things like that, that can be then built into a system to help automate it and scale it. So if you're as a realtor, if you're doing 30 homes a year, you can manage that pretty well. But now suddenly you're doing 60 or 120 or 300 because you've got reps, and agents that are working underneath your umbrella. It gets really crazy really, really fast. And yeah, that's the kind of thing where somebody might come to us and say, here's my problem. This is what I'm trying to manage. I'm losing my mind trying to do this in Excel. How can we build a system? We would ask a whole bunch of questions. How do you want it to work? Is it always that way, or is it sometimes not that way? What are those exceptions that we need to build into it so that you're not having to recreate the system every time you change? You just have to, adapt some parts of it to make it work.
And if I'm hearing you right on as far as how these systems are built, and I'll take this away from real estate and we can jump into something like auto sales or furniture sales or something like that, where you mentioned sort of like a tiered commission structure or a tiered commission based on transaction. You could set something like that up to be automated. Like if this profile sells this many units, then commission bumps to this at that point. Or you could do something like if they move this much in, they do this much volume in sales at that point, commission structure bumps up, and you could have a whole automated process where nobody has to worry about manually entering or changing those commission structures. They're set in stone. And because just working in a sales area now, from a marketing perspective, right? But looking at how people encourage their sales forces, you look at sales enablement models where you can have, I want to call it breadcrumbs or call it a reward system where, okay,
Yeah.
we have this system. If you do this much in sales, it's set in stone. At that point, you move your commission here. Your income is dependent on you. And then you never have to worry about it. It's sort of a set and forget thing as opposed to, manually editing a complex balance sheet to reflect those things. Those things
Yeah,
are possible, right?
absolutely. And you got it exactly. And, like another scenario would be spiffs. A lot of the partners that we work with that we might be a reseller of a specific inventory solution, and we've already got a commission structure in place that if we refer a product and it sells, then we get a commission, and that's the normal, right? But then they might say, hey, for the first 3 months of the year, we're going to do a promotion, and every sale we're going to pay out an extra $200 spiff to the referrer or the sales rep or the company, what have you. And those are one-offs, right? And it's a short time. It's not the normal,
Right.
but way of managing that. And so, um, yeah, and that's where you get into truly the brilliance of having a relational database, which is what QuickBase ultimately is, where everything's connected, right? I've got a rep, I've got a client, I've got a sales rep or an agent, I've got a client, I've got a sale, and there may be lots and lots of details behind the scenes and underlying all that stuff. But if you can connect it all, right, then you can say, hey, when you hit a certain number of sales for every client within a certain industry, as long as the dollar amount's over a certain minimum, all those different things that can absolutely be built into it so that you're not having to, go crazy with spreadsheets.
Yeah, and well, you brought up spiffs, and I hadn't even thought of that as far as like a temporary program for encouragement. Like that's a great use case because when you first started talking, I'm thinking affiliate marketing too. Like a
Yep.
reseller is anybody who works as an affiliate, or you take for example, it can make it hyper relevant to our industry where we work with promotional product partners where they essentially are reselling on behalf of another organization. Uh,
Hmm.
or, that lends itself to retail, and right back to where you were talking originally with product. Anytime that you're managing something for somebody else and setting up a pay grade based on that, or you're setting your margins based on that, you can customize those solutions with something like VARC as a partner with QuickBooks. So tell me a little bit, because you weren't joking when you said it would be easy to talk an hour about the topic. So it was like, watching the time now, I'm like, okay, yes, it's pretty easy to do that. But I want to sort of speak to business owners that, and because, it applies to a lot of our industry, with when you have real estate agents or managing brokers managing several real estate agents. Doing books is something that they all do independently because they manage their own finance, they manage their own money, taxes, commission structures, all that kind of thing.
Yeah.
Um, in the case of where, a lot of people manage with spreadsheets, and a lot of people, pen and paper, that kind of stuff is all over the place. How can you speak to somebody who has never engaged with a cloud solution that might be it, the whole mention of cloud is sort of a ubiquitous term nowadays, and a lot of people use it, but a lot of people still are like, I don't know what a cloud is. Um, you know, Speak to, from the perspective of somebody who has never engaged with a system like this, never engaged with an online system, a cloud system, or a cloud-based system, how that's kind of functions, and maybe, I don't want to say settle their fears, because, that's going to be an
Yep.
experience thing, but, let them know what it's all about or how it's structured.
Yeah, for sure. So probably I, I'm going to try to explain this in maybe a couple different ways, but let me just kind of suggest this. I've been, in the world of IT, so to speak, for the last 25 years. Okay, so I'm very comfortable with IT. I'm very comfortable with cloud technology. Okay, I'm not a programmer. I don't care to be a programmer. I don't want to be a programmer. Okay, I just know that I need a solution. Okay, I've got a problem and I need a solution. Okay, so whether it's cloud, a cloud solution, software as a service, or if it's some computer software that I install like on my computer, to me, ultimately, it doesn't really matter as long as I've got a solution to that problem. The question with what is the cloud and why the cloud is helpful or important is, okay, I've got one scenario where I've got this software that's somebody else built. I purchased the software, I downloaded and installed the software. It's on my laptop, and that's great. Or it's on my office network computer. Okay. But what happens if I want to access that when I'm on the road? Okay. What happens if I'm a guy that's in a truck driving around and I want to be able to do stuff in the field and have 100% access to that system? Well, now I've got to remote desktop in or use remote control software to connect to my office computer or my office laptop, or got to carry that laptop around. Okay. That desktop, otherwise known as on-prem or on-premise software, really makes it harder to be mobile. It makes it really, really harder to have multiple people accessing that software or that data at the same time if it's on a computer in an office on-prem. Okay. So think of the cloud as just the exact same thing, but accessible anywhere, anytime via a browser, for example. Okay. So instead of booting up your Windows computer or your Mac computer and double clicking on an icon to open up an application, just imagine you're opening up your Firefox or your Chrome browser and you're logging in to the system. You're logging into the software, but you can do that from wherever you want, on the road, on vacation, in your truck, where have you, um, or on your phone, okay, or on a tablet. You're at a job site that's getting built out or developed, and I don't want to have to run back to the office to do something. I want to be able to do it on my phone, and so that cloud is what enables that to happen wherever you happen to be. So in reality, it's not this big scary thing. It's just a different way of um, making access to that software or to those systems fluid and easy wherever you happen to be, versus tying you to an office and a desk in a building.
I like to explain it as outsourcing. When you work with a cloud-based solution, you're basically outsourcing your hard drive, right? Where you instead of, for those of you that remember back in the day when you got software, you would bring home a box with CDs or whatever it is and install it on your computer, and then it's on your computer. If your computer glitches, you lose your software, then you have to apply the license to a new computer or a new piece of hardware that you have to use in something like a cloud system. And because cloud's such a weird word, it's like I feel like we need to go back and rebrand the word just to make it more like, oh, now I get it. It's just there's a chunk of hard drive somewhere that keeps that system, and you can access the system through those hard drives. And if those fail, there's usually a backup set of hard drives somewhere. There's redundancies to where if the system collapses, they have to do that, or else they're be out of business really fast. And
Yeah.
so there's multiple systems that store that information, and all you're doing is outsourcing this where it gets stored. It's not home. It's just somebody has a server farm somewhere, and you can pull from that anytime. And it makes it very handy, right? Like you said, you can do it with multiple devices. Somebody could be in the field on a cell phone, enter numbers, say like you're talking about, into their business account. They can go home, fire up the laptop, and do the same thing.
Yeah, and I'll give you a really good example of how it can impact a business in a very significant way. Our company, we've got clients nationwide, but our company operations, our building, if you will, is in South Houston, and so near the Gulf of Mexico. Well, guess what? Gulf of Mexico has hurricanes. And so whether it's Hurricane Katrina that's going through Mississippi and Louisiana and hitting Texas, there's a lot of flooding and people going home and working, from their houses and stuff like that. When the building is flooded, and it's like if your servers and networks and computers are all in that one space and that's where they have to be, that can be, I mean, you can literally go out of business if you can't run your business because everything's in that one office. And so, many years ago, when some of the bigger hurricanes hit the Houston coast, we had to figure that out and go, okay, well, having all that data on our server doesn't make sense anymore. We migrated everything to the cloud. So basically, instead of me logging into, opening up my laptop and having everything physically, like you said, on a hard drive on that laptop, think of the hard drives in the cloud. And so I just log in to a kind of like a machine within a machine that's in the cloud, on the internet, secure, all that kind of stuff, backed up, etc. My entire office could get completely wiped out with a hurricane or a tornado, and I'm still in business because I can go anywhere and log into that, my quote unquote computer from anywhere I happen to be, as long as I've got internet access.
Awesome. Yeah, and I fall back on that because it's, you always think that, and like you said, anybody who's worked around cloud business for a long time, it's easy and comfortable, but to somebody who's not used to it, which is more common than what, it's hard for me to get my head around because I've been in it for so long. And then you talk to somebody and you're like, well, I've never dealt with anything like that. Oh, of course you haven't, because, different fields, different careers, different things. So it's trying to do that, take an empathetic approach and put yourself in somebody else's shoes. And so I appreciate that perspective on how somebody works with a system like yours. But we are moving to the top of the hour. I want to be conscientious of your time. So give me sort of an outline again and a reminder of VARC Solutions and how you work with not necessarily companies like ours, but just companies in general, and how you integrate with things like QuickBooks and QuickBase.
Great. And by the way, I mean, just thanks in general for the opportunity to be here and talk to you too. In that, if I had to say, what do I want people to remember about me and VARC Solutions is we're QuickBooks experts and we're QuickBase experts. So from a QuickBooks perspective, if you need to buy QuickBooks, okay, and you want to make sure that you get the best price for the software, give us a call. We're resellers of the software, and we can get you the best price and actually save you more money than if you even called Intuit and bought it directly on QuickBooks.com. We're that kind of a reseller. We can save you money. We can set up your books. We can clean up your books if you've had somebody else doing the books for a while and they kind of made a mess of it. A lot of times, the folks that make a mess of it are the actual owner. Okay. And sometimes it's the mother-in-law or the sister's cousin's brother, that is not a formally trained bookkeeper doing the books, or at least attempting to. And a lot of times, there's messes that are made and mistakes that are made, and also, unfortunately, sometimes there's embezzlement, and people that, shouldn't be doing things that they shouldn't be doing certain things. And so having a company like ours as a second pair of eyes on the books, whether you outsource all of your bookkeeping and accounting to us, or if you just want to have somebody look at your books every once in a while and just make sure things are right, train you on how to do things the right way, we do all of that. Talking about the cloud, a lot of people are migrating from QuickBooks Desktop to the cloud, and that transition is not always easy, but we do it as well. So like if somebody wanted to migrate from desktop to online QuickBooks, we do that. We do the hard work when it comes to that kind of stuff. And then, yeah, if somebody needs a custom solution, we can build it and ultimately integrate that QuickBase platform back into QuickBooks, so that whatever you're doing in that QuickBase system, if it has accounting impact, we can still get that accounting stuff integrated back into QuickBooks so that you can run your financials. So we label ourselves as a solution provider, and that involves QuickBooks, it involves QuickBase, and think of us as that partner that you can work with to help come up with the right solution. And when what we can do is the right fit, we'll tell you so. And if you've got something you're trying to do that we really don't do or can't do, we'll tell you that too, and say, hey, not us, but maybe these other people can do it. So we want to be that kind of partner with clients, to make sure that we're being a valuable partner over the long term.
As you were just explaining that, I could imagine a handful of people that I already know listening to this and going, oh, I can do that. So, thank you for providing value as far as that goes for our listeners, for sure. And how do people find VARC Solutions?
Probably the easiest way is just to go to varcsolutions.com. My email address is brad@varcsolutions.com. We try to keep it simple. And you go there, reach out, phone numbers on the website, email me. And again, if I can refer you to somebody else that's a better fit for certain things, recommend one solution versus another solution, happy to do that. And that's why we've been in business for 25 years, is because we take care of clients and we get them set up with the right solution.
Excellent. Well, Brad, appreciate your time, and thank you for reviewing this topic with us.
Absolutely. Thanks for having me on the show.
This concludes episode number 88 for the National Land Realty Podcast, talking with Brad White, the Chief People and Operations Officer at VARC Solutions. You can learn more about land ownership and the buying and selling of land at nationalland.com.